Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. Welcome to another SnL. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the L standing next to me.
Not the L today.
Not the L today. SnL, normally Scott and Lane show today. Lane is working hard out in the field, but we have our business partner and third team leader at the Sackin-Stone team, Philip Talbert, with us. So today is going to be the SNP show. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, that's terrific. So remember, this is our weekly show. It's all about you. For any of you watching, be sure you go ahead and put a question up on the screen in the message box. We'll be happy to address that today. And make sure that you like our channel so you can see these shows week to week. Let's get started. Today's going to be a fun topic. And it's going to be one of, hopefully the first of several shows on this very hot topic here in our Orange County and Long Beach real estate marketplace. And that's the ADU, Auxiliary Dwelling Unit, which is a hot topic now. And we wanted to talk about what is an ADU. And if we look back at the history of an ADU, ADU, again, is a fairly new term for simply a granny flat, an in-law unit, a separate small structure on usually what would be a suburban lot that is one room with a bathroom or maybe a small suite of rooms that houses an in-law or a relative, an adult child. But they're expanding the use of this, making things legal and wanting and encouraging people to build these structures. Philip, what's your background with ADUs? Tell us a little bit about what you know.
Well, I don't, as far as building them and that, I don't have a lot of background, but it is a fairly new concept. The fact that it's legal now, I mean, that cities are recognizing that these are okay, because historically in single family suburban neighborhoods, like you said, it was one unit per lot was always the requirement. Now with this ADU overlay that the state has put in place, which definitely overrides a lot of the city requirements. The fact that you can have one now is a state overlay. So it has changed the fact that you can do it legally now. There still are obviously building codes and things that are required, so that it doesn't bypass any of that. It's just that now you are allowed to do this with a permit.
Got it. So when we talk about, we're going to get into the reason for this call today regarding the city of Newport Beach, but a little bit more background on exactly what an ADU is. With regards to this structure, in general, the auxiliary dwelling unit would be a separate structure on a property. But to your point, Philip, they still would have to comply with certain building codes as far as setbacks go. Can it be attached to your existing home in the way of, let's say, converting a garage or something? So let's talk in general. Can it be a garage conversion and or a separate structure?
Sure, it can be for sure be a garage conversion now. The initial aspect of the ADU that kind of came into play a few years ago, the requirement was for it that it had to be attached to your home. That it couldn't be a separate structure. It had to be attached, and the entrance could not be visible from the street. So you'd have to go off the side or something. But now I think that has morphed into, now they can be a separate structure on the property, and that now you can convert a garage into an ADU, which obviously is going to change the dynamic of neighborhoods drastically if it got caught on and a lot of those were put into place.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and have Steve put up our next banner, which is the reason why we decided to have today's call. And that's the fact that we just heard in the news within the last 2 weeks that the city of Newport Beach, our neighbor to the south from Huntington Beach, is currently waiving all ADU permit fees until 2022. Now, that is a small, Newport Beach is a small city with just about 100,000 people, but could this be an arbiter of the future for the rest of Orange County and LA County? We don't know, but let's talk about what they're doing and what that means today. So with regards to waiving permit fees, what we understand is they're waiving the cost of folks getting building permits to either build a brand new structure and all the permits involved with that, or B, convert an existing construction by bringing it up to current code. Your thoughts on that, Philip?
Well, I think it's probably, overall, I think it's probably a good policy. And what the reason behind this, I'm assuming, obviously I haven't researched with the city to know exactly why they're doing this, but my assumption would be is just to start taking control of the situation. So they're stepping in to say, okay, this is in place. We want to control it. We want to make sure that we're involved. And Newport Beach has even though it's a very eclectic community in a way too, because it has a lot of neighborhoods that have been non-conforming over the years, and I think the illegal type of ADU has been established, or there are a lot of them there. So now they're trying to bring those into the daylight, if you will, so that they can control that they're up to code with the electrical and safety items that a lot of times when things are just done illegally, they're done on the sly, on the cheap. And so now that the city's taking advantage of this to say, okay, we know you now that we can know that you have one, but if it's going to be a legal one, then you have to comply with the codes.
So what I'm hearing now, it's almost like the elephant in the room, or example, or saying, we know these units are out there, but so many of them have been flying under the radar. And
right.
The fact of the matter is, with the new state mandates, you are allowed to have the ADUs, and Newport Beach wants to basically take a census, flesh these all out, and get them all on record. And their hope with this, one reason I think why they might be waiving the ADU fees, their hope is it's going to flush all these out, and the permit fees, which can range, I think, from about $1,000 to $5,000,
yes,
could be waived. But it's a double-edged sword, because these homeowners are going to have to bring these units up to code, and that's going to be significant costs in hiring plumbing, electrical contractors, et cetera, because they will, I would imagine, again, we'll do more research on this for the future, but conceptually, they're going to have to be up to current building codes with regards, again, to plumbing, heating, safety, and electrical. Is that your thought as well, Philip?
Well, I would say it depends on how the city is going to handle it, but you're right, the reduction or the elimination of the fees are an enticement to get people to come out of the shadows with them, so to speak, and also then get them up to code, because the city itself has, as we all know from being in real estate, there's an inspection, a city inspection that's required anytime you sell any property in Newport Beach. So that's already in place in that city. So one by one, obviously, before the ADUs were allowed, as city inspections came through when properties were sold, then they would discover a legal ADU, and then before they were allowed, they would have made them restore it back to a garage or back to storage or whatever it was. But now this is an opportunity for the homeowners to really take advantage of this, because if they don't take advantage of this and the fee structure goes back to the normal structure, and then they get caught down the road, then obviously they've a lot, money that they would have saved on the fees, they are going to have to put into either making the unit conforming one way or the other.
Got it. And I think too, when we paint with a broad brush and we get the stat that fees can run anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. I think it's easy to put context to this for the homeowner, in that the permitting is just simply going to be commensurate with the amount of work that needs to be done. It's no difference if you were doing a room addition or adding on some space to your home, or bringing something up to code that may have been back in the 50s or the 60s or something like that. So that's why the permit fees vary so widely. There's no magic formula to that. It's very, very structured and laid out by the city. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd say the permit fees on the higher end would be if you are going to build a completely new ADU in your backyard. You're starting from scratch with a new construction, so your permit fees would be, I'd say, like you said, probably at the higher, a higher side of that. If you already have an existing ADU that pretty much complies, and there are just certain safety things that you might have to bring up to code, then if you're just doing simple electrical permit or plumbing permit or something, then that would be on the lower end of that spectrum of costs.
Yeah, before we move on to the next banner with regards to this, I know, Philip, kudos to you. You've actually built homes before and had a lot of experience with helping clients do major room additions and remodels and stuff. Can you just run by really quick for our viewers kind of what the categories of the permits are, generally speaking? Let's say going from, let's broad brush from, building a brand new unit from scratch.
Well, right. Because a lot of the permit fees are driven by the amount of work that the city has to do to complete the permit. If it's a brand new structure, then the city's going to be involved in every single aspect of that construction, from the footings to the foundation to the framing to the all the electrical, plumbing, and all those aspects all the way up to the roof, from foundation to roof. So it's going to be a lot of inspections by inspectors. It's going to be reviewing major, more major plans for the city. So those all cost the city money, and that's why you would have a higher permit. If you have an existing ADU that's, like I said, is pretty much to code and already existing, then you might just have to have the city out for some simple electrical or, like I said, plumbing kind of permit. So it's not going to cost the city as much to get that passed through. That's what drives those fees.
That's great. I think that's a really, really great explanation. So moving ahead to our next banner, we'll wrap up today's call with pros and cons to an ADU. And I want to stress to our viewers today, these are more anecdotal, not factual. They're based on Phillips and and Lane, who's not on the show today. He consulted with us, so we're grateful for his input today. But kind of our thoughts in general, what the pros and cons can be to the ADU, and also being your real estate advisors, what this might do to real estate value, saleability, desirability of your home, etc. So we can just banter back and forth, Philip. I mean, at first, I think the pros to an ADU, now that the state again has mandated that they are legal, would be if it's done correctly, it could theoretically add value to the property, because A, you're adding square footage, livable square footage to your property, and B, you're adding a second source of income perhaps for the property. Your thoughts on those two areas that I think could be considered pros?
Sure. Anytime you're adding square footage or adding amenities to your house, it's going to obviously bring more value to your property. So I think the initial idea of the ADU is for family, extended family or such. So I'm not sure anyone would have to check with local cities to see about the aspect of being able to rent these out, because that wasn't the original concept of the ADU. I mean, maybe it was illegally, but the idea is for extended family, and that's to enhance your family life. Also, I think over time, if every single house in a suburban neighborhood had an ADU, then obviously parking is going to be impacted, especially if people convert garages to ADUs. Then you're going to have a whole lot of cars on the street. So it's really going to change the dynamic of a neighborhood. I mean, that's an extreme example to say every single house in a neighborhood had an ADU that they converted the garage, and so therefore they didn't have parking. So and I think that's a negative to me for a regular suburban neighborhood to have a parking situation like that.
And I think what I'm hearing, Philip, whether or not, and again, we stress, we don't know whether this is a viable way for someone to create additional income for their property. I would imagine the city, that would go city by city, perhaps, even though the mandate from the state is that you can build the ADU. I do want to stress it would be a city by city situation as to requirements with who can live in that unit and how much income you could derive. But if we get back to our Newport Beach example, which is, again, the crux of the call today, the reasons they're quoting as for reducing or eliminating the permit fees are, one, they want to encourage everybody to come out from the shadows, and these people that have had their illegal units over the years to come out from the shadows and bring them up to current code, just to create a safer housing standard, if you will, for the city, make the city even that much safer. And then number two, they're saying, and this is where it kind of goes along with what we were just talking about, they're wanting to increase the housing stock. In other words, we know in most of Orange County, except for a few spots in South Orange County, we're pretty much built out. And as anyone knows, by what I call the beehive apartment blocks we see going up everywhere, everything's kind of now starting to go vertical with multifamily living, much higher density. This is just one more step to create, in my opinion, as Newport Beach is quoted, housing stock. So again, notwithstanding who might live in these units, they're wanting to create more dwellings for people to reside.
Correct. And affordable housing is obviously a big topic statewide because of how expensive housing is in California. So the city is looking at this to say, okay, this is a way that we can comply with some of the requirements for affordable housing in Newport Beach by having these dwellings put in place. Now, once again, does that mean it's only a family that's allowed to live there? or is it available to be rented out just to any other person that's not related to the people who own the property? I think the intent initially was to make it more affordable for a family to have multi-generations, or have help their kids get into their own a little bit of independence as they get older and have their own separate kind of unit or something like that. I'm assuming that's how it was initially put into place. But as things, other politics and stuff get involved, we may see it be that it's okay just to rent these out because they do provide additional housing in the community.
You know what? I love one of the words that you just used, Philip, and that was the word intent. We know so many things that get developed and go through the system, so to speak, within municipalities and so forth. Start with the intent. And I would agree with you 100%. I think the intention here is very good. Ideally, it would be a wonderful way to create those extended families living on the same property, and perhaps the elderly generation or the young generation who's just starting out, the older generation maybe on a fixed income. It is a way to create affordable housing, but within the family unit. Now we'll see, as you said, how that morphs, with different legislature, politics, if you will, et cetera, into the future. So this is just a topic that is moving. I mean, we just hit the green light. It's a go right now. There's going to be yellow flashing lights. I'm sure there'll be fits and starts as this moves on. We hope that we can continue to be a resource with regards to this. We can be counted upon to stay up to date. We're going to dig in deeper, make this a priority for us, and have further shows on this. If you're still watching, or even if you're watching after the fact, do send us your questions, your thoughts on this all-important unit issue with regards to auxiliary dwelling units. Again, understanding the impetus for today's call is what Newport Beach is doing, but I have a feeling, and I'd like you to weigh in right before we wrap up, Phil, I think this is going to be something that we're going to see throughout Orange County, and it's not going to go away in the next few years.
No, not at all. It's going to just gain popularity, and we all have to be super naive to think that even if people build these with extended family provisions or intent, like you said, they could easily be looking at it just a way to get extra income, and then who polices it? That's another thing. Who's code enforcement is not prepared to police every property having an ADU and who's living in that ADU. So I could definitely see that it's going to be a big topic, like you say.
Absolutely. We'll wrap up today. To me, again, in closing, I'd like to say this to me is one of those what I call the wild, wild west items. It's in its infancy. It's not lawless, but it's generally very kind of free-flowing right now with not too many guidelines. You can count on us to be there in the future. Thanks so much for watching today. Make sure you stay tuned every week for an SnL show, Scott and Lane. But again, today, thanks so much, Philip, for joining us. And I think Philip added a lot of value today. I'm going to encourage Lane that we might include him as a guest on a more regular basis. Again, if you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we will see you next week. For Scott and
Philip,
we say goodbye. Have a great week.
Have a good week.